This should not be happening in the NBA. This is not exaggeration. This is not hype. There is something happening right now that simply doesn't make sense within the logic of basketball. A player too tall, too fast, too skilled. As if someone created an athlete without limits and placed him in the most competitive league in the world. Victor Wembanyama is not just playing well. He is doing things that until recently were considered impossible. Guard-level handles in a center's body. Contested shots that shouldn't go in, going in. Defenses that don't work. Matchups that simply don't solve anything. And there is one detail that changes everything. The players know it. You can see it in their reactions, in the hesitation, in the way defenses try and fail. It's not just talent. It feels outside the pattern, outside control. As if the NBA still hasn't found an answer. And maybe there isn't one. If you want to understand why the NBA is truly worried about Victor Wembanyama, make sure to follow the channel and leave a like. Because this isn't just about one player, it's about someone who might change the game forever. Victor Wembanyama should not exist. Not in this form, not with this skill set. Because for decades basketball has followed a very clear logic. Taller players dominate the paint, smaller players control the game. Each position has its role. Every athlete has limits. But he breaks all of that. At over 7'3", he moves like a guard. He dribbles with fluidity, creates plays, shoots from distance with ease. And when you think you've seen everything, he does something even more absurd, something that doesn't fit into any comparison. And that creates a real problem, because how do you defend someone like that? If you give space, he attacks. If you press him, he goes over you. If you contest, he shoots above anyone. There is no clear answer, no manual. And that's exactly where the concern begins, because when a player breaks every rule, the entire game has to adapt to him. For decades, basketball evolved, but always within clear limits. Players like Shaquille O'Neal dominated with power. Kevin Durant changed the game with height and shooting. Giannis brought speed and strength in an unusual body. Each generation pushed the limits further, but still within a recognizable structure. Until now, because Wembanyama is not just an evolution. He is a complete break from that pattern. He combines traits that historically never existed in the same player. Extreme height with perimeter mobility. Defensive range with refined offensive skill. And that's what makes everything feel so strange. Because when you try to compare him to someone, the comparison always fails. He is not a new Durant, not a new Giannis, not a new Shaq. He is something else, something without a clear reference in NBA history. And that creates a critical point. Because when there is no comparison, it means the game has never seen this before. And when the game has never seen something like this, it doesn't yet know how to respond. From the moment Victor Wembanyama was announced in the draft, the expectations were already massive. He wasn't just another promising prospect. He was called the greatest generational talent ever. Scouts, analysts, former players, all saying the same thing. Something that almost never happens in the NBA. A complete consensus. But there's one important detail. Hype doesn't always become reality. The history of the NBA is full of players who arrived with huge expectations and couldn't live up to them. Pressure, adaptation, physicality, all of it can destroy careers before they even begin. But with Wembanyama, it was different. From his very first games, he showed that he wasn't just potential. He already looked comfortable, dominant at times, making plays that usually take years to develop. As if the transition to the NBA simply wasn't a problem for him. And that's where the real concern starts. Because when someone arrives ready and still has years to evolve, what exactly can he become? There is a problem that is becoming more and more obvious, and no one has solved it yet. NBA defenses are extremely advanced. Coaches study every movement, every tendency, every detail. Players are trained to react to anything. But when it comes to Victor Wembanyama, all of that starts to fail. Because it doesn't matter what the strategy is. If they put a smaller defender, he shoots over them. If they put a stronger one, he uses speed. If they double team him, he finds space. And even when the defense looks perfect, he still finishes. And that's what starts to become scary. It's not just that he is good, it's that he doesn't have a clear weakness. And at the NBA level, that is extremely rare. Every player has something to exploit. Every system has a flaw. But so far, Wembanyama seems to escape that logic. And that leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. Maybe the problem isn't the defense. Maybe the problem is that he simply cannot be defended. There is something happening in the NBA that no one talks about openly. It's not in interviews, it doesn't appear in official statements, but you can see it in the details, in players' reactions, in the quick looks after an impossible play, in the way coaches stay silent, without immediate answers. It's a different kind of pressure. Because it's not just about facing a great player. The NBA has seen that before. What's happening now is different. It's the feeling of dealing with something that hasn't been fully understood yet, something outside the pattern, and that creates a silent effect. Players start to hesitate. Small decisions take a little longer. Movements that used to be natural now require thought. And at this level, that fraction of a second changes everything. And maybe this is the most concerning part. Because when doubt enters the game, dominance begins before the ball is even in play. And if this continues to grow, it won't just be one dominant player. It will be something that changes the entire balance of the league. There are plays, and then there are moments that simply should not happen. And with Victor Wembanyama, those moments are becoming frequent. Impossible blocks coming from angles that don't make sense. Contested shots over multiple defenders, still going in naturally. Perimeter moves executed by someone over 7.3. But the most impressive part is not just the play itself. It's the reaction after. Players freeze, look at each other, as if trying to understand what just happened. Coaches don't react immediately. The crowd takes a second, and then explodes. Because even those watching live need a moment to process it. And that reveals something much bigger. Because these are not just highlights, they are signals. Small moments that show we are witnessing something outside the normal. Something that hasn't been fully understood yet. And when these moments start to repeat, it stops being luck and becomes a pattern. If this already feels absurd now, the real problem is what comes next. Because Victor Wembanyama is still at the beginning, still adapting, still understanding the pace of the league, the physicality of opponents, the defensive strategies. And even so, he is already doing things that no one can fully explain. Now imagine that with development. More strength, more consistency, better decision-making. Because historically the greatest players in the NBA take a massive leap in their early years. And when that happens to a normal player, it's already scary. But he is not normal. And that's exactly what makes this situation so unsettling. Because if right now he already forces defenses to completely break down, what happens when he reaches his peak? When there are fewer mistakes, when every decision is sharper, when every movement is more precise. And this is the part no one wants to say out loud. Because maybe the NBA isn't dealing with a generational talent, but with something that could dominate the league for years without an answer. What if everything we are seeing right now is just the beginning? Because there is a pattern in the NBA. Great players evolve. They learn from mistakes. They adjust their game. And over time, they become nearly unstoppable. Now imagine that process happening with someone who already starts at a completely different level. That's where things change scale. Because now we are not talking about potential anymore. We are talking about inevitability. If he keeps evolving, and everything suggests he will, there comes a point where it won't be about how to stop him, but how to survive him during a game. And that has already started to appear. Moments where he simply takes over. Sequences where nothing seems to work against him. And the more that happens, the stronger the feeling becomes that we are watching the early chapters of something much bigger. And maybe that is the most uncomfortable part. Because when something like this begins, it almost never stops. There is a truth about Victor Wembanyama that many people avoid saying. Not because it isn't obvious, but because it is uncomfortable. The NBA has always been a league of balance. Stars rise, dominate for a time, and then get challenged. The game adapts. The competition responds. It has always worked like that. There has always been an answer. But what if this time there isn't one? Because everything we are seeing points to something different. A player who doesn't just fit into the system, but forces the entire system to adapt to him. And when that happens, the impact goes far beyond stats or wins. It changes the game itself, and maybe that is the most important part. We are not just watching a special talent, we are watching a possible shift of era. Something that redefines what is possible in the NBA. And that doesn't happen often. In fact, it almost never happens. And now comes the question that stays in your mind after all of this. Is the NBA ready for Victor Wembanyama? Or will Victor Wembanyama force the NBA to change? Because if what we are seeing now already feels impossible, the future might be even more terrifying.